Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Lot Pod. Welcome to the Lot Pod Awards Ceremony 2023, our second annual awards ceremony after last year's, obviously. As you can see, for those watching on YouTube or watching this back on YouTube, we are dressed to impress here. I've got a wonky tie, and Reese was actually going to wear a cap with that, which I think would have been funny. Yeah, I've mentioned him already. Joining me for the evening to announce all of our winners is, of course, my right-hand man, my co-host, but our amazing stats man. Statman Reese.
I'm a
Stat.
man.
Freeze.
What a wonderful evening we have planned, Reese.
We do indeed. I think the last time I dressed like this was probably for the Coupe de France in the Football Manager series, actually.
What it last Saturday at your wedding?
Sorry. Actually, no, probably wedding, actually.
He's
Yeah.
already
No,
forgot.
I've played FM since then, actually. No.
He's already forgotten this. I do apologise.
Yeah, we've got a big night ahead of us today, or tonight even.
We have lots of ratings, lots of awards given out tonight. What are the categories, Statman Reese?
So, for those that have filled the survey, and a big thank you for everyone that has done, we've had over 185 responses, which are the most that we've ever had for any surveys that we've done. We're going to go through the player ratings for each player. So, each player has been rated out of 10. We'll go through that rating. Me and Eddie will think if that's fair enough or if that's too harsh or not harsh enough. And once we've gone through all the players and a rating for Rowan Smith, we're going to go through to the awards, which are for Player of the Season, Signing of the Season, and Young Player of the Season. And in that, we've done a bit of a Man of Steel format. It was a first, second, third place. First place was 3 points.
3 points.
2 place. Second place was 2 points, and third place was 1 point. So it's closer than I thought it was going to be.
Really? Don't give anything away. Oh, what a
Nope,
cliffhanger.
just gonna leave that in there. So you have to listen till whatever
to the
minute we
death.
finish.
Yeah, for however long this podcast could go on for 20 minutes. It could go on for 2 hours. Let's find out. First of all, the Leeds Rhinos men's side are not the shining beacon of Leeds Rhinos. They're the worst side of all the Leeds Rhinos. So we'd just like to say the pride of Leeds, the pride of Leeds Rhinos, again, not just for 2023, but for 2022, are the wheelchair side, the women's side, and the PDRL side. So thank you to all three of those sides for giving us a fantastic 2023 and good luck with all their final games, and congratulations to the wheelchair side.
Just worth adding on that, when we did this last year, we did actually have a Team of the Season award to do.
Yes.
But the reason why we've not done it this year is because the men's team are out of all their competitions and all the other sides are still in it.
Yeah. So thank you to all the other sides for making 2023 a fantastic year. But these are the awards, unfortunately, for the Leeds Rhinos men's side for 2023. How did the survey work, Reese? How could people vote on this for the last?
It was just a
10
simple
days?
Google survey that I shared on my Twitter and also on a couple of Facebook pages actually as well. And then we just asked everyone to score each player from 1 to 10. I've then taken an average of all of those scores. I'm only laughing because Laurie just put in the comments, you look as though you're going to announce a Eurovision score for the UK. 12 is not a possible answer. And actually, I'd quite like to announce a Eurovision score because I quite like Eurovision. There you go.
Let's just do this in like a broken English, Swedish accent.
Yeah, just do that. Just get Graham Norton on in the background slagging everyone else off.
Laughing at everyone.
We should bring Mark on just to slag every player off, or Duncan. Like, just do it like that.
A 2-hour podcast.
Yeah.
Do you want to? Shall we start with how we're going to start? Are we going to start in squad number order?
We're going to do squad number order. Last year we did worst to last. This year we're going to do squad number order. I've decided to do it that way because the first half of our squad numbers barely played anyway.
They've all pissed off.
So it's not going to skew the figures in some way. So we are starting with number 1, Richie Myler.
A forgotten man, I feel.
Because he didn't play at the end of the season. But he still scored fairly averagely, I'm going to say. Richie got a 6.0.
6.0.
Which I think's about.
I agree.
Feels about right.
I agree. I think I gave him lower, but I do feel across everyone's votes that a 6 is about right. He did make a diabolical start at Warrington. I think he did a couple of knock-ons and we ripped him apart on here, not for the first time, probably not for the last time. Sorry, Richie. But I feel a bit of a forgotten man because it just feels like ages since he last played.
Yeah, but he had that stint in the middle. Particularly, I remember the Catalan game at home where I thought he played really well. He had that stint in the middle where he started to come back into that form again that we were used to, but then unfortunately injuries has got the best of him. Unfortunately, I feel like he must have been injured for the last third of the season.
Must have been.
And I don't think he'll be number 1 next year either. So
no chance. No chance. Good start. 6 out of 10. Who's next?
David Fusitua.
If Miley was a 6, I'm going to say the same.
Didn't realise we didn't plan this. We're going higher or lower now. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, I'll just guess.
All right, then. Higher or lower than Richie Miley?
Play along in the YouTube comments. Higher or lower than the 6 Richie Miley? I reckon the same because, like as I said to about Miley there, how he started the year and then got injured. Fusitua was almost the opposite. Whereas he came into the squad towards the back end of the year. I'd say a 6.
Okay, so you're saying dead even. Adam in the comments is saying higher. Adam is correct. Fusitua scored a 6.2.
6.2. Wow. Did you agree with that?
I think I gave Fusitua a 7, to be honest. And I gave that because when he was on the pitch, I thought he made a difference to the side. I think his injuries get the better of him this year, and he still scored a good amount of tries this year. I think if he's fully fit, and we said this last year, if he's fit for the majority of the season, he's a 15-try, 20-try striker in the league.
Oh, he's a specific
kick. So I gave him especially if he kicked him, yeah. So I gave him a 7 based on the fact that when he played well.
Yeah, I agree. Get him on the pitch. He'll score bucket loads. Who's next? Number 3.
Number 3, Harry Newman.
Oh.
Higher or lower in the comments. We're going to have to fill some blurb in waiting for the comments to come in, Eddie. But higher or lower for Harry Newman?
I think frustrating year. The most frustrating year for Harry. Make no mistake. Injuries, that word again, petulance, his attitude, the rumours that he swore at a fan, and he's coming into his last year in 2024, so it's a massive year for him. Not, as I've said previously, loads, not just for Harry and the Rhinos, but for Harry in his career, because he dreams of the NRL, and he's nowhere near the NRL. He's nowhere near, simply because of his injury record, unfortunately. But if he has a barnstorm in 2024, plays loads, scores loads, improves his attitude, I think, as I say, it's been the most frustrating year for Harry in blue and amber. But I think what's also going to really kick him square between his legs, really powerfully, is not going to get picked for England for the Tonga series. And
to be honest, I think that's the right call.
Absolutely.
Even if you take his attitude aside,
yeah,
I don't think he's.
I agree.
Of the best English 4 centres out there, and especially if you're putting Herbie Farnworth in that equation.
But Herbie's number 1. So
so I don't think so. I mean, Laurie said lower. Ginny said she gave him a 4. Harry was in fact lower than David Fusitua 6.2. He was a 4.9.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
I was expecting it to be mid-range. I wasn't expecting it to be it's still a bottom half score, but I wasn't expecting it to be that low. But I think I scored Harry a 5 or a 6, something in that region. Wasn't his best season, including the injuries that he had. But contract year next year, only he's the one that can control what his performances look like next year. Yeah. And if we get the best of Harry Newman, then we are a phenomenal side. There's no doubt about
it. Absolutely dynamite.
Which I hope to see.
And exactly, I've just kind of said everything that's wrong with him in 2023, but I want to see the best of Harry Newman, the best ever version of Harry Newman in 2024. Who's next? Oh
On
my
to
God.
number 4, Nene McDonald. Now, this is a really interesting one because I think people have scored Nene based on his performances. As we are recording at this moment, or an hour before we got recorded, it's been announced that he has left the Leeds on a mutual agreement and has decided not to stay in Australia, and it looks like he's going to Salford.
Excellent.
So I think people's score might have changed. I probably should have a post Exodus score for Nene. But Nene, higher or lower than Harry Newman?
Higher. I kind of looked at it and I include Blake Austin in this as well for my vote for Blake. I looked at it as their performance on the field. Now, as you mentioned there, people are well within their rights to look at this in terms of McDonald and say, nah, this guy's a loser. 0 out of 10, 1 out of 10. And I'm guessing.
Well, Adams has put 8 because he's been good. I can't knock that. Laurie's put minus 6,553, which wasn't an option. I knocked off 3 points. I gave him a 5 because he wasn't 8 for me. I gave him a 5.
From memory, I think I did score him an 8 or maybe even a 9 because he was, in my opinion, it was between him and Cammy and James McDonald for Player of the Year between those three. So I gave him. So I reckon he's definitely going to score higher than Harry Newman at 4.9.
You would be correct. He got a 5.4.
Wow, that's really low. But yeah, I get it.
Completely but if you look at I'm just going to get the scores up on my other laptop because my my mouse is playing up. But he got a vote for every scoring category. So he got a vote for 1 to 10. Literally,
yeah,
he's got a score for everything. And people tended to score. The most vote that he got was actually 7 out of 10.
That must have been me.
39 people were 7 out of 10, and then 33 people were 5 out of 10.
Mm.
So, in that scale, from there. On to number 5, Ash Hanley.
Yeah,
a bit of a strange year for Ash, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because certainly the numbers didn't produce to what he produced the season before in terms of his meters and also from his try scoring record. Played out of position for quite a few games.
Yeah.
But Ash never faults in commitment, does he? He always puts 100% in.
Mm.
How did you feel his season went?
Average in terms of his own high standards. Very similar to what we're both going to say about Mikulecki coming up. But just to his own high standards, I don't think it's helped us having naff halfbacks all year. But we had naff halfbacks last year, pretty much. So hopefully this year, and in just staying on the wing in 2024, I think his numbers will go back up because that's another one. With looking at England and Tonga, is Ash going to get in?
I don't think he will.
Yeah,
and again, I think it'd probably be a fair call.
With the form of someone else. He's another one that definitely has international aspirations, but he's kind of struggling to. But obviously, that's not just Ash and Harry as mentioned there. That's Leeds Rhinos. It's you know that just reflects how cover your ears, George. How shit we've been this season. What did Ash get?
Well, is he higher or lower than Nene?
Higher, 100%.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Yeah, Ash has got the highest score so far with 6.5.
Yeah,
which again feels about right, unfortunately, for Ash. On to the Devil's number, or someone that's made the Devil's number 6, Blake Austin. Again, a score that's going to be influenced by
heavily
instances that happened during the season.
Shot himself in foot majorly. I think another same as Nene. You know, a different. If he'd have stayed, because he tended to have 3-4 really good man of the match performances. He might have squeezed 1 or 2 more of those out towards the end of the year, which would have obviously reflected more highly in his ratings. It's definitely lower than Ash, but another one where whereas Nene kind of, people would, I assume, would have, like, as you said, with the sevens. I don't think Austin would have got a 7 race.
It's quite disappointing, actually, because someone just put in the comments that Austin should be 316.
316, of course, Laurie.
And he unfortunately isn't. Interestingly, Austin got more 1s out of 10s than Nene did.
Yeah, I kind of get
so
that.
I wonder if that means people are more aggrieved with Austin. Austin was lower than Ash Hanley, as you probably expect, and the lowest we've had so far at 4.4.
4.4. That must be, not to jump ahead, but I'd be astounded if someone's lower than a bloke who's 4.4 and essentially.
I can tell you there are scores lower than that in the players that we've got to go through.
My God. Wow.
Which nicely leads me on to number 7. Aidan Caesar.
Not giving anything away.
Not giving anything away at all. But a player that never really got going.
Not at all. Would you say that, Reece? Would you agree with that, Reece? At all in the 2 years he wore that number 7 for us?
There was glimpses, wasn't there? There was glimpses of what was capable. Obviously, we had those rants at the beginning of the season where he got 4 meters in one game at once, but we never got the partnership that was promised.
No,
we never got the image that was promised to us either. But Aidan had a tough year, I think, in general. And, towards the end of the season, he had this injury. This cynical part of my brain's going, were you actually that injured or did you just didn't want to play? But that's just the cynical fan in me.
I get that. I don't know. Probably one of the worst signings in Rhinos histories, if you ask me. I always I'm obsessed with quarter spots because they're so vital. And he took one and came with a lot of, what's the word? We expected a lot from him and we got nothing. And lower than 4.4.
Definitely. 3.8.
3.8.
So considering, by the way, that both Nene and Austin have done things to really piss off this fan base.
Yeah.
And yet have still scored higher. I think that's quite a measure on people's assessment of Caesar's performances.
That is such a good point when you consider what Austin did. And still, Caesar he's never said or done anything to us. It's just his performances have been dire. And yet that sums up Aidan Caesar's Leeds career. 3.8.
I think it does. Yeah,
I think that says everything you need to know. Who's next?
So moving on to the pack now, in Mikolaj Aledski.
Yeah.
I felt really sorry for Mick this year because his season last year, played every game last year, was the leading meter maker for props. Had an outstanding season. Clearly, obviously played for a bit of injury with the shoulder stuff to get to the grand final. Obviously meant he missed the World Cup. And to be honest, I never feel like he's got back. I don't think he's got close to where he was last year, unfortunately. And another player that might miss out on the England duty this autumn. I hope he doesn't. But I think for Mick, he will learn a lot from this season still, I think. But we set high expectations of Mick and he sets his own high expectations, but he wasn't there, unfortunately.
It wasn't, and you've hit the nail on the head, everything there. He is our pack leader, and last year, 2022, we didn't have a pack. We had, people will forget, but we had, what's he called? Bodine Thompson were playing for us. James Donaldson were playing in there, and Zane Tetevano, and everyone knows my thoughts on him. But then this year, I kind of felt he had more with him in the pack. Lasoni, Sangare, Holroyd, Aledski. That is one of the best packs in the league. If you ask me, obviously I'm going to say that. And I did expect a bigger year from him, with him having more assistance in the forwards so he didn't have to do everything. He had 3 deputies with him that he could drag along and say, this is the standard. But I'm sure he's disappointed on his year, as I'm going to assume majority of Leeds fans are. But like we've said tons of times on this podcast, it's just because of his 2022 was so immense.
And I
High
fully
standards.
back him to come back next year
Oh,
and,
without a
and
doubt.
get close to that. You know,
So a
I'll
good
never hold it
off
against
season.
Mick.
Part of me wants him to get selected for England because I always like to see Leeds players selected for England because I'm not particularly interested in any kind of international sport, not just international rugby league, in terms of England. And when a Leeds player is picked, it piques my interest. But the other side of that, Reece, says I want him to have a good rest in the off season.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
heal up. So I think that's more important.
Okay. Higher or lower than Aiden Caesar?
Oh, higher. Can I
Higher.
guess?
Go on.
Everyone guess in the comments. Play along at home. Patrick Warden says Mick carried the pack in 2022. I'm guessing he struggled with a serious injury. And Ginny says, just shows where the morale of the team has been at this year. Yeah, kind of agree with those. I'm going to say probably the highest score of the evening, 6.8.
Gordon's put 6, Ginny's put 5. Unfortunately, Ginny's closer. It's 5.4 for Mick.
5.4. Goodness me. I don't agree with that, but I'm not here to agree or disagree, am I?
No, to be honest, I think I gave him a 6.
Yeah.
To be fair, but
I think a 6 would have been, or a 6 point, yeah. But the results are in.
The results are in. Now, speaking of results, the next player I put in was probably a bit harsh because I haven't included some players that haven't played many games for us. So your Leon Ruins, your Nicholas Thomas Watson. Watson. Oh, hang on, is it Thomas Nicholas and Watson? Whatever, the young prop. I haven't included some of those players like Alfie Edge as well because they haven't played a lot for us. But because he spat his dummy out, I put Cruz Leeming in this. He only played two, three games?
3 games, I think.
I don't need
3
to say
games
a lot
to qualify.
We don't need to say a lot for him. I just want you to say if he's higher or lower than Mick and where you think he is.
Spat his dummy out and lower. So who's the lowest? Caesar.
Caesar's the lowest at 3.8.
He has to be lower than Hayden. He has to be. He has to be Reece.
Cruz Leeming is the lowest rated player in this ratings at 2.4.
2.4. It's too high. People in the comments will agree with me. It is way too high.
Yeah, they're coming in now. We've had a 1, we've had a 2. So, yeah. So, probably a bit harsh for me to include him, but he spat his dummy out, so he deserves the right.
He deserves that kick.
On to Zane Tetivano, the new number 10 this year for these Rhinos.
Yes.
Probably more fairer to compare his score to Alensky than Cruz. Again, another player that I just don't think's hit expectation. I will give him credit. His disciplinary record was much better this year. He did give us that one amazing hit. I mean, that incredible hit. I can't remember what game it was. I think it was Catalan, wasn't it?
I think it was Catalan at home.
It was an awesome hit. And that, probably his best thing he ever did in his Rhino shirt.
Yeah,
was that. So, yeah, disappointing season. We never saw the best of Zane, did we, at the end? And obviously, unfortunately, his season ended prematurely with his heart condition.
It did, and we do wish him well. Of course we do. I can't say any more about Zane Tetivano because it is exhausted to the point of exhausting.
So do you think he's got higher or lower than Mick?
Then Mick? Oh, lower. Way lower.
Lower.
Probably towards Aiden Caesars. So in the 3s, I'd say. Maximum.
Well, not quite. Zane Tetivano was a 4.1.
Yeah. That's I would agree with that.
Next on the agenda.
For me, but I agree with it.
Next on the agenda, James Bentley.
You know, another one that I think could be kind of mid-range.
He certainly wasn't the highlights that we've seen in the latter part of last year.
But
he had
like
injuries this
year. Every player.
Yeah. He had injuries as well, didn't he? And to be fair, I think he was outshone by other second rows. James McDonald mainly. We've got 6.4s coming in, 6.5s for Bentley. He did get a couple of tries this year as well. Did Bento. So, but nowhere near what we saw last year.
No. Obviously signed his new deal, so we all hope he picks up some form. Probably probably around that 5.5 mark. Very middle for diddle.
Someone's hit it on the head in the comments. It's
5.7.
5.7.
Yeah.
5.7 for James.
Rings true.
On to number 12, Mr. Versatile, Reece Martin.
Now we're talking
We're
player
starting
of the
to talk
year.
about good numbers now.
We are. We're getting to the top end of these player ratings now. We're
and last year's player of the season, I may add.
He won last year, the Lot Pod player of the year. Yeah, another awesome year for him. An awesome player, always fit, always performs, incredible boot, incredible attitude. One of those who we always mention on this platform about captain potential. Plays in numerous positions, and it feels like no matter what position you play him in, he sticks to the same standard. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. Not halfback, but
obviously it drops slightly at half, but even then, he's still.
I think he's done an incredibly good job at centre this year. He's been caught out at some times, but he's also played that position incredibly well. I think his season has been hindered by being playing at centre. You know, I would much rather see Reece in his best position at second row. But like you say, Reece is it's a minimum 7 out of 10 every game from Reece, isn't it? And the games that he has good, you know, that's just a standard game. When he has a good game, it's easy an 8 or 9. And it does show in the rating as well. And the rating was 8.1.
Yeah, definitely. Shows in our comments as well. Patrick says 7.9. Ollie Warman says 7.8. Adam Maguire says 8.4. Ginny says 9. Love him. Lead Zeppelin even says 11. I agree. 8 is... I'd have gone slightly higher. Maybe an 8.5.
Yeah.
But
we had 185 people respond, so there's a good amount of votes in there to get a good and accurate score.
It kind of proves how accurate it can be. But yeah, player of the year potential without a doubt.
And probably onto his competitor, if I'm going to predict a player of the season. Number 13, Cam Smith Appreciation Society.
Cammy, yeah.
Another great season. Cam, another great player, and a bit like Reece, just a bit of a Mr. Dependable.
Yeah,
I think for me. I think he's suffered from the halfbacks this year, not being able to fully flourish, but always top of the tackle count. A lot of the times up is the carries count. He was my highest rating. I gave him a 9 out of 10. What do you think? What do you think about Cam?
Yeah, player of the year potential, as I said earlier, between him and McDonald, really. I can't think of anything else to say about Cammy. We just constantly praise him. And even in a year when we have been truly horrific, he's been a shining light. And I can only imagine what he's going to be like next year with 2 halfbacks, Croft and Frawley, playing with them. That's going to be... I
was wondering if you're going to drop the Croft bomb in there.
That's going to be... it's going to help him out immensely, because I do... And I mentioned it, anyone that's listened to this podcast throughout the year would have heard me and Reece say this loads, but I do think there were times when he had to try more. And I know he does have that game. He does. He's got the skills to kind of attack the line and kind of try more halfback style stuff, which is great. But I feel in a set game plan with 2 halfbacks, he can kind of be more of a free man rather than...
He can cause so much more problems, because he felt on occasion this year that he was trying to do much on his own, and then sometimes a fans get a bit frustrated because he get caught out and you have to run into contact. But because there was no options available to him, so the key question then: higher or lower than
higher?
Martin?
Higher. Yeah. Higher.
You would be wrong.
Wow! Oh my god! By a point.
He's also not lower than Reece Martin.
All right.
Cameron Smith's score was 8.1.
We're going to a tiebreaker.
So I was meant to use the ratings as a tiebreaker in the event of the Man of Steel votes equaling the same score. We might have to do it in reverse now. Otherwise it wouldn't work. But yeah, I think that's probably a really good assessment of the season. Both Reece and Cameron, 8.1s, the
So
highest scores that we've got on the player ratings.
Everybody in our YouTube comments, Laurie, BTR, Leeds Zeppelin, Adam Maguire, Ollie Warman, Patrick Wardman, all said higher, all said between, 8.1 from Leeds Zeppelin, but everyone else said between 8.3 to 8.7. So true reflection, I feel.
We are in a good zone of players because we now move on to Jared O'Connor, obviously the prodigal son of this podcast.
Yep, friend of the pod.
I feel like for Jared, again, it wasn't a particular game for me this year where Jared set the world alight. You know, he had that playoff game against Wigan last year where Jared was just the best player easily on the pitch. Yeah. I don't think Jared's had many of those games this year, but I think he's just been good in general. And we still have to remember he's still learning that role. But he has also beaten out Cruz to that position as well.
Yeah. And in Cruz Leeming, people can't forget someone that should have been picked for the England World Cup squad as well. You know, there was an outrage when Sean Wayne left Cruz out of that World Cup squad. The biggest compliment I can pay Jared is similar to the one I've said a few times about Reece Martin's goal kicking. It's boring because Reece Martin's goal kicking is so good. Is in that Kevin Sinfield zone of if you're at the game, you can go for the pee or go for the drink when he's taking a conversion because he's going to hit it. You know, it's unusual when he misses. You're like, what? And I feel similar with Jared. He's so settled now, and although he's still learning the hooking role, like you mentioned there, his tackle stats are phenomenal. You know, we have a running joke throughout the year, don't we?
It's just Cam or Jared, isn't it, who makes the more tackles. His working defence is brilliant. I think that helps because he was a loose forward. I think that helps him in that area of the game. I do think that we still need a bit of a change of hooker that can come off the bench and change a game and maybe inject a bit of pace. But I also think Jared is still definitely a shoo-in for that number 9 shirt next year.
I think he'll get it.
So it has to be lower than 8.1 because I've already told you that it's the highest. 8.1 was the highest. Jared was a 7.1.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think I gave him an 8 or maybe a 7, but yeah, he was around there.
Another good, solid year from Jared. Still learning.
Next on the list, number 15, Sam Lasone.
And lit the season alight at the back end of the year. What do you think?
I mean, we had people on here, Duncan, that was telling him to get dropped into the reserves and sent on dual reg. To be fair, at the start of the season, he did look
like a Bradford player, yeah.
He did look unfit, and then it felt after that Huddersfield game, he was a completely different player.
Yeah.
And someone that I always like a player that can come off the bench and people get excited about. They'll see. We had a little bit of it of Sangare at the beginning of the season.
Potential there.
But when the Sony comes on a pitch, the fans get excited. One, to sing the song, and two, because they know that Sam's probably going to do something, and I like that. But if he can continue that trajectory that he was on in the second half of that season, we've got a hell of an impact player at prop next season.
He kind of grew into the cult hero role, and he kind of embraced it, like we've said before, and kind of loves the chant, you know, hugging Ronnie the Rhino, and kind of thrived off that, and that'll continue. And I think he'll feel more kind of at home, and kind of, you know, he'll kind of grow into it. In terms of his rating, quite high. I wouldn't say 7.
I really like Adam's comment. 7.5 after his partner went home, 5.5 before.
It's a fact. He did improve when Georgia went home.
After Georgia went home.
Sorry, Georgia, but it's factual. Don't know how that happened.
He wasn't quite a 7, though. He was a 6.9.
Yeah.
Good.
I agree with that. 6.9.
And that's where the good numbers end temporarily, because at number 16, we have Daryl Alfords.
Now, we know that Cruz Leeming is the lowest.
He was. I probably shouldn't have declared that, should I? But Cruz Leeming was the lowest.
There we go. Having played 3 games, we think. Definitely 3 max.
Yeah,
I don't
3,
think he played 4. Maybe even been 2. So Daryl Alfords. I'm at the stage now where I've gone way ages ago beyond anger and even disappointment. I'm past all that in terms of Daryl Offorts. I'm now at the stage where it's pity, and I don't think I've ever felt that for any Leeds Rhinos player ever. And I think the best thing we can do with Daryl is try to get him to a new club, not just for Leeds Rhinos' sake, but for Daryl's sake. Because I'm a pure assumption here, but I think a fresh start for him is what
I'd be very surprised if he's here next season.
Me too. In terms of his rating,
go on. I guess
1.8.
Well, he can't because I said Cruz was the lowest.
Oh, you said was, so I thought it were going to be worse.
Oh shit! No.
2.5.
2.5. 2.5.
Daryl.
If you take Cruz out of it, which I probably should have included, but Daryl would be the lowest rated player if you took Cruz out.
Yeah, the quicker Daryl leaves, the better for everybody, I reckon.
Indeed. On to another new signing, number 17, Justin. Did we settle on Sangare or Sangare?
I'm a Sangare, but I think on Sky they're a Sangare, aren't they? I think it might just be accent.
Anyway, Justin, really, really positive start to the season that I felt that we didn't see it continue.
No. And
because he had that little bit of a cult status that the Stone Age finished with.
Genuinely just took the words out of my mouth.
Oh, did I? Oh, my God. See, so in sync.
So in sync. That's why we're here. That kind of, exactly what you said earlier, big imposing prop that comes off the bench and everyone notices. And I keep repeating myself, but something we said on the pod earlier in the year where if you're new to rugby league, if you're new to Leeds Rhinos, when he walks on, you're almost like, who's that one? Who's that guy? Who's that man mountain? Look at the size of him. And that kind of cult status is coming, cult hero status is coming for him as well. And sadly, season cut short with injury. But I'm going to say,
part of me thinks there's still something in there. I still think there's a player in there.
Oh, without doubt.
There's definitely something in there.
There was a lot of things we saw this year where he was trying things, particularly against Saints at home. And when I think he should have scored or assist.
Yeah, he knocked it on the. I think he knocked it on the tackle. He knocked it on the tackle on the on their line, and then in Golden Point he knocked it on in the first tackle.
So there were lots of things where he was almost like an early man, but you could see the potential and what could come in future in terms of his rating. Maybe middle of the road, 5.5.
5.1.
I'm slightly lower, I feel.
Yeah.
But I understand it.
On to another prop. On to Tom Holroyd. Someone that we said at the end of last year, this was a make or break season for Tom after his longer term injury and then his ban for a good old punch up.
Mm.
If I was to ask you, how would he rate against Sam Lasone and at 6.9 and Mick at 5.4? Where do you think Holroyd would be?
In between those.
In between?
In between. Higher than... What did Mick get? Sorry, 5.4?
5.4, yeah.
Higher than Mick. I'd say 6.2.
And before we move on to the score, do you think Holroyd hit your expectations for this season?
I think he did.
It was a funny one for me because on the pitch, Holroyd's workload and effort looks massive. And then I look at the stats and he only gets 50, 60 metres per game.
Mm.
But I feel like when you see him on the pitch, that doesn't quite reflect for me. It surprises me every time I see Holroyd's meters, to be honest. Because I love his leg drive after tackle. He's always someone that goes forward in contact. I've already talked about it. We've seen him step players before.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think Tom's still young, isn't he? He's still under. I think he must be 21, 22 still.
23.
So you think he's going to be in between Mick and...
I think he's going to be in between those two. But for my thoughts, it's his best Leeds Rhinos season.
Mm.
I know he's only young and things have been missed through injuries and bans. It's quite easy to say, but his best Leeds Rhinos season. So if this rating is above middle of the road, he's going to be better next year for certain.
6.5.
Yeah.
On to a different new signing. Number 19, James McDonald.
Player of the year now.
Player of the year now?
I reckon this will be player of the year.
You think James McDonald will be player of the year?
I think he's going to win
okay.
Lockpod Award for player of the year. And another player.
A gem of a find.
It's just like you mentioned earlier about James Bentley not getting in and Morgan. It made me feel about Morgan Gannon as well. Like, was he ready? And Rowan found James McDonald, gave him a chance, and this kid just grabbed it with both hands and almost said to Rowan, "If you play me, you're not going to be able to drop me. I'm just going to show everybody."
That's exactly what happened.
Show everybody just how good I am. Because at the start of the 2023, when we did our preseason game review, with Rob Oates, and we went through all the recruitment, it was more aimed at Nene McDonald, Sam Lasoni. They were the big two signings for us, and we focused on those. And James McDonald and Leon Ruan and Lewis Roberts were all like, "Oh yeah," and we also signed. And James McDonald was in one of those. So when he started at Warrington, the first game of the year, everyone was like, "All right, let's see what this kid's got." And he became, from that moment forward, became undroppable.
Yeah.
And we had comparisons on here. I think it was myself, Mark, yourself, Duncan. We've said it loads. Gareth
Ellis and
Carl Ablett, JJB, and you do. And I know as fans, and we are Leeds fans talking to Leeds fans on a Leeds podcast, so it's very easy, especially someone like me, to get carried away and say these things. But the fact so many of us have kind of made these comparisons, we can't be wrong. And excuse me, his potential is sky high, and so impressed.
There is a red light with this player for me. We did all these extensions this year, but the one player we haven't extended that we should have done is McDonald. I think he only signed a 2-year deal when he signed it, if I remember rightly. If he did, he needs to be the first person on the list for a new contract. He's even a bigger priority for a contract for me than Harry Newman.
Yeah.
And talk about players that are out of contract next year.
Yeah.
McDonald has to be the number one priority because he should be wearing a number 11 shirt for another 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, he's definitely got number 11. He'll get a new deal before the start of 24.
I certainly hope so.
Without a shadow of a doubt,
we can't make the mistake we did with Walters with McDonald.
He'll have at the minimum a 3-year deal to extend it to a 4 in total.
I should hope so.
That will definitely happen. In terms of his rating, Reese.
So how close was he to 8.1, which was the highest which was Reese and Cam? How close do you think he is?
I think he must have matched it.
He hasn't. It's a 7.9.
Jesus Christ. And I know I've been going about these ratings and offering my view on these ratings, but that to me is too low. I don't know how people think listening back to this on Spotify and iTunes or in our YouTube
I gave him higher than Cam. Cam. I gave him and Cam a 9, and I gave Reese an 8.
I think there were 1 point between McDonald and Cam, so I can't remember if it were an 8. I think it was a 9 and a 10. I think I gave him a 10.
Right.
McDonald,
brilliant player.
Amazing.
What should be his future second row partner, because he's not a fucking halfback, and I think his score reflects this, unfortunately, this season, Morgan Gannon. Not
played much as well.
Not played a lot. I'm really disappointed in the fanning about of Morgan in the positions. To be honest, I think Morgan last year was one of the best young prospects in Super League, and he probably still is. But I just hope that this year's not taking a battering on his confidence. I know he got a nasty concussions, and I think Leeds actually managed that really, really well. But he was played out of position.
Yeah.
And unfairly, I thought.
It's been one of those years where Rowan's sandwiched people in where he can. I know we've been down to the bare bones in terms of the squad, but I don't think 2023 is a year Morgan should look back on.
No,
I think 2022, and I mean that as Morgan and Leeds Rhinos fans. The Morgan Gannon we know is the 2022 Morgan Gannon.
And you know what? He's still got youth on his side. You know, he's 19.
He's 19?
Yeah.
He's just become an adult.
Yeah. You know, he's played a grand final at 18 and was part of a side pretty much nearly week in, week out as part of a grand final side. So there's plenty of time for Morgan. Unfortunately, his score was
Lower.
Low.
Yeah.
Where do you think it was?
Maybe 5, middle of the road.
5.3.
Yeah, that adds up. But Morgan's 19.
Yeah.
So even in 3 years, he's only going to be still so young. And like we've said loads on here, the potential there is astronomical. Absolutely astronomical. He just needs, excuse me, 1-2 solid years playing Super League, and you're probably looking at NRL, I reckon.
No, they don't want him. They don't want him. On to another new signing this time. Number 21, Luke Hooley.
Tough debut at KR, but nothing.
And people have a very tough time at Craven Park anyway.
That's not exclusive to Luke Hooley. Lots of fullbacks have a tough time there because Jordan Abdul's incredible kicking game. But another one that, when he got his chance, similar to McDonald, really, kind of took it and showed us what he can do. I think all of us listening to this now don't think he's going to be here next year.
I thought when he was one of our form players at one point. You know, I think he scored 3 games in a row.
Knows where the try line is.
He was catching some brilliant balls in the air, especially on the line as well. I thought he'd gained confidence in catching a high ball. And to be fair, I think he's been unfairly rated, from my opinion. Do you think he's higher or lower than Morgan?
I want him to be higher because I'd believe him to be at least, to be honest, from the few games we did see him in, 6.5 for me. But in terms of the poll results, probably about a 5.
He's a 5.4.
Low.
In Myler was a 6. I think Myler probably deserves to be slightly ahead of Hooley. But I still think 5.4 is quite low.
I agree.
For Luke, to be fair. I thought he did a really good job when he filled in.
Lead Zeppelin says there, 6.5, he showed some promise, and I agree with that. And Adam Maguire says, I think any fullback would have struggled in them conditions at KR. 5.3 for me, due to not playing too much. And I kind of get that, the ratings kind of reflecting how often someone's played. But it looks like he's leaving, which I kind of understand because he's going to go to Cass. He's going
to be third choice here, so it makes sense. There. He's got to go play rugby.
And I wish him all the best because he seems like Lead Zeppelin said in the YouTube comments there, lots of promise there.
Number 22, unfortunately for Josh, we will have to talk about Sam Walters.
Is this the 4th player now where Nene, Austin, who else is left? Leeming and Walters. I think all for differing reasons. Their votes and their results could be.
If any of those are the biggest regrets, when you include the circumstances that we've had this year,
it's this
Walters is clearly the biggest regret.
Yeah, it's this one.
And he definitely, for me, had his best season in a Rhinos shirt, without a doubt. Easily.
Best season of his career.
So would you put him as the best prop of the season for Rhinos?
Christ. I don't even know if I can bring myself to, even if I do believe that. Has he been the best prop this year for the Rhinos? So who's been the height? 6.9?
Lasonia was 6.9, Holroyd 6.5, and Aledzki 5.4, Sangre 5.
I don't think he's had as good a year as Lasonia. Because I think towards the back end, Lasonia been on a good try-scoring run, and has he been the best?
I would disagree with you there. I think Walters has been the best prop.
Yeah, he probably has.
And it reflects in the ratings. Walters got a 7.3.
That just really, cover your ears, George. That just really pisses me off. Why is he leaving this club?
Yeah, as Gordon's just said, he's the most consistent prop this year.
Yeah, he is. Part of me is, I feel like we always bring it up, but we need, like when you go through a breakup or something and you need something to end just for the pain to relieve. I feel like we're all we all need Sam to leave us so we can forget about him.
We need
'Cause
a
at the
rebound
moment-
prop. That's what we need.
Yeah, we need a rebound prop, and it's so painful. None more so than our own Josh, who's still in pain now. That we've had to watch him and see this potential. But I can promise you all, he'll be shy at Wigan. I promise you.
It's not going to be. He ain't going to be. He is not going to be. On another player that's leaving, actually, number 23, Liam Tyndall, recently announced to Hull, the world's worst kept secret in Super League this year. I am not disappointed at Liam's leaving. I saw someone comment on Twitter that Lassone has more tries for Leeds
It was Chris.
than Liam Tyndall does, which is not great for a winger. I'll give you his score straight away. It's 3.5.
Yeah, I think that's Liam Tyndall's career. Next.
Yeah. Number 24, Lewis Roberts.
Another one
Thrown into the deep end quite a few times.
Yeah, thrown in the deep end, kind of chucked in as and when and where Rowan kind of required a body. Potential's there. I think he's got the size, to be a centre. Is he going to get a chance with Max Simpson and Newman and probably what's it called, Momorovsky signing?
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting one. I don't want to kind of put him down, but an interesting year, let's say.
So do you think he's higher or lower than Liam Tyndall?
What did Tyndall get? Sorry, I didn't make a note of that.
3.5.
Oh, higher.
4.1.
Yeah. Agreed.
Number 25, the best loose forward in the Super League, James Donaldson.
Absolutely astounded that, again, another player that I just feel like I'm constantly bagging. Astounded that we gave him another year. Absolutely astounded. In terms of this season, I can't.
My biggest disappointment with Donaldson this year is that the number of penalties he won for a high tackle was just not. It just wasn't worth it, was it? That's the whole point. You're in the side.
One thing. Go on, get your head took
that and wearing his budgie smugglers in the sink when he's doing the song in the changing room. But he barely won any penalties for a high tackle this year.
He needs to work on that in the
He
offseason.
does need to start leaning even further forward than he already does.
He must have been similar or slightly lower than 4.1.
No, he's higher.
5.1.
He's a 5.4.
Really? People think he had the same as Michaletsky. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I just realised that. Yeah.
That is fair enough.
People have spoken. Number 26, Corey Johnson.
Probably a similar rating, I would imagine. Maybe slightly less. Bit of a.
Do you ever feel like he got his opportunity, 10, 20 minutes? He obviously played some games at halfback where I felt like he was very, very protected.
Yeah.
But have you seen anything in Corey?
There were times this year where when he came on at hooker, I was watching it, obviously his distribution from play of the ball, and I did think he had a bit more zip and accuracy. And
he did. That's what I was going to say. I felt sometimes the pace increase.
Yeah, to be fair, I did think he kind of sped things up and added a bit more. Obviously, it's only Jared's first full year at 9, to be fair to him. So he's still got loads of development left. It's nothing against Jared, friend of the pod, love him to bits. But there were times when Corey came on, I thought, yeah, he's adding something that perhaps we didn't have when Jared were there. But then he drops in and drops out, and he's a player where if he plays, I'm not bothered. But if he doesn't play, I'm not bothered.
I think
it sounds harsh, but that's just how I feel.
Next year will be interesting for him because if we do sign another hooker,
which I think we will,
which I think we are doing by the noise that's coming out, it will be a senior. It'll be an older player that will. Who? Sorry.
No,
sorry. You can't say that. You can't say that. It'll be an older player. He'll be an older player that I think will be a mentor to Jared. and that means Corey's down in the pecking order. And if that
Does
is
that
the
bother
case,
you, Reese? If we do, sign another hooker, would it bother you if Corey dropped
no,
further down and got less game
I
time?
think it's the right thing to do. I think for me, if I think Jared's a very good 9. He's got the ability, and I think if he has someone else that could, I think in the moment Jared's lacking a senior experience backup, a Parcell, someone like that can just help him progress his game, but also someone that could just come on for 10, 15 minutes and change the game for us.
And do something slightly different from
and
9
do something different,
Slightly, maybe a bit of a kicking game or a bit more
a running 9,
a scoop.
Someone that can just bring a bit, someone that can bring a bit of pace on.
Leeming. Yeah.
So, and I think Corey is a good player, but
Agreed.
I think a dual reg next year alone to Championship is probably best for Corey.
I agree. That. Have we said his rating? Sorry.
No, it was lower than James Donaldson. It was 5.2.
Yeah, agreed.
And the final player, number 29, Jack Sinfield, a player that we finally got to see after weeks and weeks of asking, and probably had his best performance in the final game of the season against Cass.
Without a
doubt. How do you think he went on?
He's the chosen one. He is the chosen one for the club. So there's a lot of pressure there just for his name. How did he get on? I wanted to see more of him. I was banging the drum for Jack for the whole season. I wanted to see more of him. I think we will see more of him.
Do you think we need to see more from Sinfield from what we saw of him?
I think the game against...
And it sounds very harsh to ask that. He's an 18-year-old kid. He's just done his A-levels this year. I think we all... If this was a normal academy player, I don't think there obviously wouldn't be the weight of expectation. And us to see that name, we go, well, we want you in there. That's just a natural instinct for us to do. Yeah. But I still felt we could have seen a bit more from Jack, and maybe we saw that against Cass.
I think that's what I'm going to... The Castleford game, it was like he was saying to Rowan, this is it now. This is what I can do. This is what I've got. And I can only assume that he demanded to speak to Rowan in the off-season or after that game to say, right, what are my plans moving forward here? Because you're signing 2 new halfbacks. Where do I fit in? And I think that game, with him having Reece Martin in the halves with him and being the only one playing halfback, he controlled it more. He was at first receiver more. So I don't know whether that may have been Rowan saying to Jack, show me what you can do. Or it may have been Jack saying to Rowan, I'll show you.
I think there was an element of protecting Jack in some of these games, and maybe
they've unleashed him.
Maybe Cass, we gave him that confidence to go with it and crack it. We've got Brody Koff coming in. He's probably one of the best halfbacks in the league.
Yeah.
He can only get better learning off a player like that.
But I do think next year, sorry, Reece, regardless of how the year's going all the way to the grand final, I still think there's games. We used to say it about Brad Dwyer, me and you. In fact, I think it might have been your point. We used to say there's Brad Dwyer games in Super League.
It was normally Toulouse or Whitefield.
Those mental games where just let Brad Dwyer have a game and we're probably going to win anyway, very arrogant of us. And next year, there will be games where, regardless of how we're playing, whether say we've got win 3-up bounce and then we play, God forbid, Featherstone. That's the game there. Even though we've won 3 on the bounce, that Featherstone game, home or away, is a Jack Sinfield game.
And the Challenge Cup as well.
The Challenge Cup. I don't particularly think Catalans travel that well. So for me, Catalans at home. I know you kind of think of their packer, but to me, that would be... There's moments in the season where I think you should drop Jack Sinfield in, and it should be more, at the bare minimum, 5 games, at the absolute bare minimum.
He will get that opportunity next year. Where do you think he scored? In fact, do you think he scored higher than Blake Austin or Aidan Caesar?
Yes.
He did, 5.6.
5.6.
So on that measure, but Jack Sinfield was our highest rated halfback.
Well done, Jack. You're the best halfback at the club.
So that is the player ratings done. So just as a real quick reminder, the bottom 3 ratings were Cruz Leeming with 2.4, Daryl Alfords with 2.5, and Liam Tyndall with 3.5. And the top 3 ratings were James McDonnell with 7.9 and Reece Martin and Cameron Smith for 8.1.
Yeah.
With all the players done, it now means we must go on to Rowan Smith. I can tell you Rowan Smith got a score for every rating out of 10.
Yeah, every single one from 1
Every single one.
to 10. Let us know in the YouTube comments while we speak about Rowan. What did you rate Rowan Smith's season out of 10?
My score for Rowan was a 4.
Mine too. As we said this loads and loads and loads, but there were moments throughout the season where the club could have sacked him. Perhaps people
you
think
gave him. Sorry, hang on. Stop you. You gave him a 4.
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 4 out of 10.
Wow.
Still believe in the long-term planning, but you've got to look at things as they are. And it was, as I said, loads, the worst Super League season for me. The worst Super League season.
Yeah.
For Leeds Rhinos to miss out on the playoffs is horrific. Absolutely diabolical. Unacceptable.
I think for me, as I've said before, the lack of accountability for poor performances is one of my main frustrations this year. The lack of tactical presence in the, and what I mean by that is that when I've watched a team, I can't see how Leeds are going to play. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I love it when we play off the cuff and the chaos, and I think it's awesome to watch and it's so exciting. But sometimes I just want to go out there and beat a team because that's how we play.
Yeah.
And I don't think we ever came close to that this year, unfortunately.
Well, I kind of looked at it from the view of he could have been sacked 3 times. Could have been sacked after Wakefield, could have been sacked after Wigan, and he could have been sacked after Catalans. So how could you score him any higher?
Sorry, Lee Zeppelin's just put, I can't wait to see Rowan put Brodie Croft in the back row.
In the back row. Reece Martin at half-back. So that my reasoning was, sum up the year, missed out on the playoffs. Doesn't say enough, like you said it in the after-game pressers, and he could have been sacked on at least 3 occasions by the club. So I think 4 out of 10. Laurie says 4.5 out of 10. Adam Maguire says 3. Gordon Vale says 4. Ginny says she gave him a 4, so she agrees with me. No one's gone above 5, Reese. What is the...
So I'm just going to look at what he got last year, actually, just really, really quickly.
Last year? 8.
Yeah.
Easily. Got us to a grand final, came in, completely revamped the whole club after Richard Hague.
Oh, God. Right. Okay. So last year, he got 130 responses for 10 out of 10.
Wow.
He didn't get a score below an 8 last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
This year, he got rated 4.8.
Yeah. That is an enormous drop, but reflects the year. Would you agree with that?
I agree. So I think 4.8 is probably about right. If anything, a little bit high. But I think it's about right.
Sums up 2023 perfectly.
So that's the player ratings done. And the coach ratings.
Excellent.
We now move on to the 3 awards. So just a reminder, the 3 awards are the player of the season, signing of the season, young player of the season. This year we changed it up a bit. Gave myself a bit more work to do. And that was that. I don't know why. If you gave a player 3rd place, they got 1 point. If you gave them 2nd place, they got 2 points. And if you gave them 1st place, you gave them 3 points. Let's do young player of the season first. Young player of the season is if they started the season at 22 or under at the start. So the players in contention for this award were Harry Newman, Jared O'Connor, Tom Holroyd, Morgan Gannon, Sam Walters, Lewis Roberts, Corey Johnson, and Jackson Field. I can tell you the players that received a nomination for first place were Harry Newman, Jared O'Connor, Tom Holroyd, Sam Walters, Lewis Roberts, and Jack Sinfield. So only 2 players did not receive a first place nomination. In third place, with 255 points, and whilst I'm doing this, please predict in the comments what you think it's going to be. In third place with 255 points was Tom Holroyd.
Kind of agree with that. I don't think, as I said earlier, it is his best season for Leeds, and I think third in Young Player of the Year. Would you agree with that? I think that's a good.
I think that's a fair assessment. I think it's a fair assessment.
I agree.
In second place, with 318 points, is Jared O'Connor.
I agree with that as well. You know, his first year, his full season at hooker, and second place. Friend of the pod,
which is why I was wanting him to be first, but he hasn't. Especially when the player who scored 369 points,
it makes you puke,
is no longer going to be a Leeds Rhinos player.
It makes you puke.
And that is Sam Walters.
And everyone in the comments said Sam Walters to win. Gordon Vale, Laurie, Adam, everyone said.
So Sam Walters got
Sam Walters
over 50% of the votes. He got over 50% of the votes for first place.
Makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. But we need this guy out of the club as soon as possible. Sam, we need you to leave us so we can get over you.
Or just not go. Signing of the season next. The players in contention and people in the comments predict number 1 as I go through these. Nene McDonald, Sam Lasone, Justin Sangare, James McDonnell, Luke Hooley, and Lewis Roberts. Every player received at least 1 nomination for first place.
Oh, brilliant.
In third place with 176 points, someone that probably would have been a lot higher had they not been a dick, Nene McDonald.
In third? Really? So I do feel that him acting like he did massively affected the results here.
I think so. And I think I've just seen Patrick said he couldn't vote for a guy who was leaving. I think quite a few people have voted for other players because they didn't want to vote for people that were leaving. I didn't vote for Nene McDonald in this. If he wasn't leaving, he probably, I don't think I'd have put in first place, but he definitely would have been higher than third place for me.
Mm-hmm.
In second place with 312 points, and the person actually received the most amount of votes for second place, Sam Lasone.
Yeah, I agree with that. He had a strong year. Obviously, second best prop after Walters. That makes sense.
And this was a bit of a landslide of first place for 454 points. With
454 points.
With 129 votes for first place. So that's 2/3 of the vote. James McDonnell.
Agreed. Do you agree with that?
It's easy, isn't it?
Yeah, absolute. And I also agree with you saying that Nene had, even if it had stayed and not, completely gone AWOL, I don't think he'd have got close to that.
I don't know. I think Nene would have shifted the vote if he hadn't had what he's done.
I think Nene
would have really shuffled that. I don't think it'd have been as much of a landslide from McDonnell, because I think a lot of those points for Lasone have come because of Nene. But in the grand scheme of things, I think Lasone second is right, and James McDonnell first is the easy
without
choice.
a doubt. Without a doubt, player easily.
So for the player of the season,
one.
I'll go through players that have had a nomination for first place.
Here we go.
Nene McDonald, Ash Hanley, Blake Austin, Reece Martin, Cameron Smith, Jared O'Connor, Sam Lasone, Tom Holroyd, James McDonnell, Sam Walters, Lewis Roberts. I would like to stress at this point that this was an open survey and maybe non-Leeds Rhinos.
It's quite clear, though, Reece, that Lewis Roberts' mum has voted on this.
Maybe.
You are welcome along, Mrs. Roberts, don't worry.
Because that was the only vote that Lewis Roberts got.
My mom thinks I'm cool.
Out of the third or second. Anyway, bless him. So,
Roberts.
In third place with 177 points, James McDonnell.
Really? Wow. I didn't. No, yeah, fair enough. I expected him to be at least second. This is the real interesting part now of this whole podcast, which is why we did it last.
That's why you've been listening now for 70
That's
minutes.
why I've been listening for an hour and 10 minutes.
In second place, with 331 points, who was 21 points short of first place.
Oh, that is close.
So it was really close. With
that is really close.
And 31 points, Reese Martin.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
Which means with 352 points, the Lot Pod Awards for Player of the Season 2023 goes to Cameron Smith.
Of course it does. Cameron Smith Appreciation Society podcast. Hands out Player of the Season award to Cameron Smith.
So just note on this really quickly. So in terms of nominations for first place, Reese had 64, Cameron had 68.
I tell you.
So, and the player ratings were 8.1 and 8.1. So, incredibly close. But I think, I'm not sure actually it should have been that close between Reese and Cameron. Personally, I think McDonnell should have been up there in second place.
I do. I think had it been, I kind of saw it as Cammy and James being close between those two. But obviously, the people have voted, and it kind of shows as well that how important the votes are.
Yeah, and the top three really makes sense from the ratings that were given as well in terms of the average that people did. It all makes sense. So yeah, Cameron Smith.
Cam was the player of the year. He was the Lot Pod, officially the Lot Pod player of the year.
He was the club player of the year, wasn't he, as well?
Yeah. Cam Smith. That's the end of the awards. That's the end of the pod.
But just to point in there, we've been trying to get Cam Smith on this podcast for ages. We've been set up a society about him. He's now been awarded Player of the Year on our podcast.
He spoke about us on Sky. He spoke about
us at the beginning of the year. What more do we need to do to get Cam on here?
We'll have to get a trophy.
We do.
And post it.
I won't be able to present it in my joggers and suit though.
In my Christmas pajamas and shirt. Oh, amazing. Thanks, everybody, for joining in on the YouTube comments. Thanks, everybody. More importantly, Reese, for voting, because that, most votes than ever, and clearly the votes do count. We will do this every year moving forward. It'll get bigger and better. And next year, let's get a trophy. Do you agree?
Agreed.
Let's get a trophy that we can post or hand out to the player of the year. Thank you to ACDB for sponsoring this. I don't think I mentioned them at the start of the podcast, but they obviously are the sponsors of the podcast and the sponsor of this one. Thanks to Reese for all his hard work. As always, he is our stats man, and without him, none of this awards and the survey would have gone ahead. Thanks to everybody for joining in with us on the YouTube comments. As always, we do live stream every single podcast that we do over on YouTube. So please head over there, hit the subscribe button, and you'll be notified if you hit the notification bell every time we go live with a podcast. That is pretty much it for us for the 2023 season. We do have an Alan Tate special coming up, which will be out in a couple of weeks. And we probably will pop up once or twice in the off-season, maybe with a mailbag or a pre-season preview or something like that. But that is pretty much our 2023 season done and dusted. We had record numbers for the podcast. It keeps growing and growing and growing, and we can thank you all. We just have to pass you all an amazing thank you. Everyone that watches on YouTube, that listens on Spotify and iTunes, we are growing and growing. It's all down to our amazing listeners. Anything to say, Reese, for the end of the year?
No, just thank you as always. Again, like Lottie says, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. The more and more people that engage in the podcast, the more and more things we can keep doing. And I like to think we're building a bit of a community as well. We will need to do some form of Lot Pod meetup again at some point.
2024 grand final.
Maybe first game of the season, I was going to say. But again, thanks for all the support. It's really appreciated. Like I said, and you will hear from us in the off season, because I'm sure there'll still be plenty to talk about.
There will, and we'll see you then. Thanks, everybody.